So my name is Josh Hurd, and we are at Malvern Manor.
Okay, we had done a walkthrough earlier, so I want you to kind of repeat a little bit mainly on the history of the place, not the hauntings just yet,
Okay.
but just the history.
So we know that the building itself was built probably in the 1870s by Captain Cullers. We know it was the fourth structure built in the town of Malvern, primarily operating then as a hotel, servicing the railroad that was going through town, which is now called the Wabash Trace. So it's a walking trail, biking trail. We know then in the 50s, the building kind of shifted gears a little bit, became more of what we would consider like a nursing home type setting. And then in the 70s, the state came in and they said, hey, you know, your hallways aren't wide enough to really accommodate the beds. And so that's when they kind of tweaked it a little bit. It became more of the group home type setting. So servicing everybody from alcoholics and people with Down syndrome to more exotic cases, multiple personalities, schizophrenics, murderers. I mean, it was a very odd population of people to have under one roof. So
You were talking about earlier there was names that had been found to establish those stories of what various types of people that were here, correct?
as far as patients and all of
Yes.
that go, yes, absolutely, absolutely.
Okay, when did this place close up?
From what we can tell, it was 2005 when it closed its doors for the last time.
Okay, was it out of Geraldine's hands at 2005?
Yes, it was. Yes, it had been out of Geraldine's hands for, I mean, not quite a number of years, but a few years anyway. It had been out of her hands. I know she was like 87 years old when she had retired, so
Okay.
they finally hung it up.
So was it the state that took it over, or somebody, another individual came
It
in?
was another individual that took it over. Interesting little story is the guy that took over. You know, this is where a lot of the claims of neglect and abuse, this is where that comes from, is all under the watch of this gentleman. Now, it's interesting because that guy didn't even have the proper licensure to pass an aspirin to you or I. He was piggybacking off of his wife's licensure at the time and running this facility, kind of moonlighting under her name. Very odd and interesting set of circumstances, especially how they must have played it to get by the state. So very, very odd for sure.
Do you know of any specific stories of any incidents that happened around the building at the time of it being a hotel?
As far as it being a hotel, we know that it went through many owners during that time frame, and it was almost as if they were like losing it in a poker game. It was switching hands so many times and very often. We do know of a couple of those owners from the past. One of them in particular was leaving work one day, and right out here on the front sidewalk, just dropped dead right on the sidewalk. So most likely something very sudden, aneurysm, heart attack, something of that nature, but took his life instantly. There was another owner that was on a family farm at one time. He passed away. It was a horrible accident. Some piece of equipment or machinery or whatever it was exploded and took his life with it. So it's definitely, you know, had its fair share of, you know, tragedy.
Do you know any of the stories about any of the patients that were here in specifically? As in, you had told me the story about the nurse had come and told you about one of their patients they had experienced.
Correct. So going into this, we knew, well, I knew that we needed to be very careful with this. It's small town Iowa. I don't want to step on anybody's toes, and at the end of the day, I don't want to make anybody upset with what we're doing here, you know? So, for example, at the end of the hallway, we have what's called Gracie's room, right? Gracie is a name that we pick up quite often on EVP recording. Whether or not that was her actual name, most likely it's not. That's her name because that's the name we got in that room. Now, what her actual name is then, I don't want to know it. We got the story of the patient in that room, that's it. Who was this patient? What was her, you know, deal? What was her diagnosis? What have you? And that was that. So Gracie to us, you know, is that spirit at the end of the hallway. You know what I'm saying? It's the exact same thing with Susie. Exact same thing with Hank. I don't want to know their actual names. I would rather leave that out.
It's a mystery.
Absolutely.
Including the shadow man down the one hallway.
Including the shadow man and that insanely interesting story that goes along with him too. So.
Okay, thank you. Can you get into the paranormal experiences that you might have had, or some of your fellow workers have had,
Absolutely.
or anybody that's walked through that they may might have experienced?
So we know that, you know, there's so much that goes on here, and it kind of depends where you're at in the house. Most people will experience shadow figures down more closer towards the nursing home wing. That's where most of those that phenomenon is happening. You'll hear little footsteps running upstairs and little tugs on your clothes and whispering in your ear, suggesting something, you know, childlike and playful. We know then that going down what we call, you know, the scary hallway or the short hallway, that's where the majority of, I don't know, you just don't feel welcome in that hallway at all. It feels darker. We know that the further down that hallway you go, the darker it gets, including then going up to the attic where it kind of crescendos, and it's a horrible, nasty, heavy feeling where it's like something is on your chest. It's hard to breathe. It's not a welcoming feeling at all. Pretty much night and day to the windy hallway, you know, where you're going to experience more of the playful, childlike things with Inez. You know, it's a very interesting place. I mean, the place in and of itself is an anomaly to us still. So.
Can you tell us some stories about the spirits that are in here? Specific, you know, you had mentioned some names about Inez and Susie.
Sure, absolutely.
I mean, I've already heard the stories, but this is to the public that might not have heard it.
So we know, like, the first time investigating whatever in Gracie's room, I remember I was in there alone for maybe 20 minutes doing an EVP session, and I was sitting specifically in her wheelchair, sitting there, and feeling this weird rubbing type sensation right here on my upper legs. And I'm like, this is very odd, this is very interesting at the same time, but I mean, it was very specific, hands on your legs type of feeling, and a rubbing sensation. I had pretty much had enough at that point. You know, I was like, okay. I got up out of that chair and I started to walk away. And that was the first time that then I had experienced this loud bang against the wall. Almost like, I'm not done with you. Get back in here. You know, whether it's she's lonely or I don't know. I don't have a clue. I found it very fascinating. And so since that day, you know, that has continued to happen. That's not only to myself, but I mean to other male investigators specifically going into that room. I've personally experienced, you know, the shadow figure in the nursing home wing. I've been what people call, you know, bum rushed or whatever by that shadow figure, and it is a terrifying experience to go through. It's, I don't know, because you're left seeing nothing after it's over. In a split second, it's already started and is done. And you're left with just the most uneasy feeling that you felt in a long time. I mean, it's so unnerving to have something like that happen to you. And I mean, I could probably talk for days about just personal experiences and things that have happened to just to buddies or whatever. It's a very interesting house.
Thank you. And for the last part of it, what does Malvern Manor mean to you?
Oh, what's that?
That came
That
from
was
that
down in
journey.
Someone's knocking on the front door. Man, that is
Somebody's
loud.
knocking on the front door.
That's the front door.
Yeah, can you go grab it?
Yeah.
Okay. Just tell him to piss off.
Why are you
Okay,
trying
nope, that's coming from the nursing wing. Sweet, I'm going.
No,
Izzy,
No,
stay.
Izzy, stay.
Say what?
that's coming from the nurse.
I'll stay with the girls.
Okay.
What's going on?
That's coming.
nice and loud, I heard it.
I think you were so hilarious.
Oh my
No,
God, no.
please no. I don't.
I don't want mommy in there.
Izzy, sit down.
That was loud.
That was very
That
loud.
was-
And like, isn't it funny? Like,
Well, see,
I was
when you
talking
were
about the
talking-
knocking.
Yeah.
Well, here's the thing.
I was talking
While
about
you were talking, I heard something like that, and I thought it was just somebody like running around up above or something. I didn't realize what
Hey, is there
exactly
anyone
that was.
outside that would be knocking on Gracie's room?
Gonna be
Holy
It'd be in the carport.
shit.
I'll go check real quick.
done.
It's right here. Is there anybody back here?
Wait, where's Mike?
No, he went down the hall.
Maybe it's him just trying to mess with us.
No, he was in there. We were all in here.
Seems so. Like,